a sense of community when you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me.
Hi, everyone. Well, before I send somebody a friend request on Facebook, or if they're sending me one, I always check their Facebook profile, because sometimes you find these little gems, I think. Like today's guest, for instance, on his Facebook profile, it says, purveyor of musical joy. Ladies and gentlemen, Dan here. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Well, thanks so much. I used to have Aging Rocker as my moniker, so I thought musical joy was better.
It sounds really nice. I like that, actually. And
well, thank you.
You're in a band, right?
Yes, the March Hare Band we've had for 25 years and been a successful show band around Vancouver. And we've been all over Canada and the US too.
So. Oh, nice. I love the name March Hare Band. That's so cool.
Yeah. My mom thought of that years ago, actually. It was kind of funny because I played with my brother and we had two people in the band with the last name of Hare. And my mom said, well, what about the rabbit from Alice in Wonderland? Why don't you use that, the March Hare?
Yeah.
I said, oh, sure.
So it sounds like you started your musical career quite a while ago, right?
I started singing and playing when I was 6 years old and playing guitar when I was 7 years old. And I always played my whole life, all through school and then after school and everything. It was, my whole life. So
when did you first get the band going?
Well, I always had bands. Even when I was in grade 4, I got some couple of guys together and said, hey, we should form a little band. And all through high school, even my band got hired to play our high school grad in Langley at LSS because we had a band. I always had bands.
Very nice, eh? For sure.
Yeah.
No, it's kind of interesting because, again, on your profile page, it says you studied philosophy.
Yeah, well, the thing is, in the early 80s, I was, I got married and I was playing in a band, and then the bands came and went. And back then it seemed like bands didn't last very long, and so I was in between bands, and I thought, well, maybe because I work at night, I'll go to school, I'll just sign up for a couple of college courses and just see what it's like. Well, I spent most of my life studying one thing or another, just anything I was interested in. I wasn't doing it for a career. I had the luxury of just taking things that I really enjoyed, and I spent most of 30 years going to some form of study.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Now back to your band. What style of music do you perform?
Well, I've always been an advocate of playing popular music, playing the songs that people want to hear, playing songs that they're familiar with and stuff. So I've never had an issue with that. I've done lots of original music. I've done lots of, I've played country music, blues, whatever. But it just seems that pop music from the golden era, what I call it, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, is what really what people want to hear. And that's what I play. And we play all the hits.
Right. I must say something good about that music, because I grew up I was a teenager in the 60s, so that's all the music that I listened to. But there's something about that music from then, 60s, 70s, that just stays with people, even the younger people, right?
I think so. And that's been my experience. We used to chase newer songs, and now we just play the feel-good songs. And what I say is that they're feel-good songs from the golden era of music, and the young people understand why they were hit songs. They just resonate with people on a human level. They're not overproduced. They're just natural, good songs, good playing, good singing, good songwriting, clever lyrics. I mean, what do you want? That's what you get. So.
Now, you mentioned you used to play or still occasionally play originals. Are you a songwriter as well?
Oh, I've got 5 CDs out that have done reasonably well. I had one song in a TV show in the States, but I just recorded an album actually with Mike Fraser, who is a friend of mine, and his resume is quite long. He's done most of the major bands and many of the major bands in the world, I guess. And I called him up and said, would you do an album with me? And so we did record it earlier this year, and it'll be coming out sometime in the fall. And that'll be a world-class effort. And I'm real proud of it. 10 of my favorite, best songs that I've written.
Very nice. Yeah. So what other music have you put out there?
Well, I did an acoustic CD about 15 years ago, and then I've done 4 CDs with March Hare. But the issue with original music is, unless you get a hit song, it's just a labor of love. So it's very expensive. It's very time consuming. And it's got a tepid sort of response, like all music does, if it's not a hit song. You know, most music that's put out, most people will never hear, and it's a labor of love, and people do it. So, and then the production values, you know, like you record. People say, well, we can record at home. Yeah, that's true, but it never quite sounds the way I want it to sound. You know, it's just not quite enough. Like, it's not world class. So I've done a lot of CDs. The best one was Running in a Dream. That was in 2005. And then I just, you know, we've done literally millions of dollars worth of gigs with our show band and our American Rock Legends tribute shows and stuff. So over the last 25 years, I mean, it's been really a good living. So I haven't needed to make, you know, a bunch of original music and go on what we call a starvation tour to try to promote original music. We're making recording act money, playing cover shows and being in a show band.
Right. Yeah. You know, I find it interesting. I live in Chilliwack, and there's a young man. I say young, he's in his 40s, whose last name is Hare, and he plays music. His dad was an artist, you know, so it's kind of interesting that,
yeah.
I don't know if you guys are related or not, but it's so interesting. I find that, you know, very interesting that both with the last name and both into music, you know.
Right. Well, you're talking about Red and Dakota. Is
Yeah.
that yeah. Yeah, no, I'm familiar with them. We're not related because my great-grandfather came from England in around 1900, just before 1900, and he was the only one from his part of the family that came here, that came to Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not directly related, but I'm sure we're distant relatives.
Yeah, because it's not that common a name, I would think, at least not out here.
No, and the Irish version is O'Hare, O'Hara. They're all the same derivative. So it's a fairly common in that respect.
Yeah, it's like my last name, guitar, you know, there's also spelled with a D on the end, and there's like Spanish, the guitarres, and, you know. So
right.
It's all the same name for sure.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I know for a lot of people, like COVID had shut everything down. It was really tough for some people, but some got on Facebook, like, you know, Zoom, like doing this type of thing, did their music, and then COVID lit up, and I mean, you know, it's not gone, but you were able to get out there. So how did you pick up from COVID? You know,
well, I mean, I'm a positive person. So it was really heartbreaking to me. I mean, I raced probably $150,000, $200,000 worth of gigs off my calendar. That kind of hurt. But then I just pivoted. I just thought, well, you know, I'm going to make the best of it. I made a list of everything I'd been meaning to do for the last 10 years. And I just started doing them. And then I thought, well, I don't want to go dark, so I'm going to put some stuff online. So I started recording my acoustic songs, just my cover tunes of what I do. And people were really liking it. It was inspirational. So I did over 100 songs during COVID, and I got over 80,000 views on my songs and lots of accolades and people thanking me for lifting their spirits. So COVID was actually not bad for me. I did lots of gigs too. I had friends that owned restaurants, and they put up the screens, and I went out and played. So I did lots of gigs. So COVID really wasn't that bad for me. It was different. I pivoted, but I have a positive mindset. So I pivoted with a positive mindset.
Yeah, that's really good, because it was so important then, because I know a lot of people got depressed, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you let it, let it.
Sure. For me, you know, I found Zoom, and it's like, whoa, you know, this was so cool, which I might not have found had it not been for COVID. So
there you go.
Right.
Yeah, so you pivoted too, in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, I lost a team. You know, I had a team that I worked with doing my show, but they're gone. They're gone, you know, doing their other things. So do you have some tours coming up currently?
Well, yeah, we just last weekend we played Dunderray Festival in West Van on Friday, and then we went up to Sun Peaks on Saturday. We just drove up there, did the show, and drove back. This weekend we're playing down in the States at Black Mountain Ranch. Then we'll be playing the Country Farms on Sunday. Hard Rock Casino 7th and 8th. We're busy all the time. This has been one of the best summers I've ever had. I mean, we've been just slammed since COVID ended around April, May last year. We've been completely slammed the whole time.
Right. So who books the gigs? Do you?
We have a personal manager, Chris Shandel from Sonic Flower Entertainment. Great guy, one of my best friends. And he looks after our calendar and makes sure that we're working as much as we need to be. So he's been a great asset to us. And I have a lot of experience. I mean, I've been around for 4 decades playing in the music business, so I know lots of people. And we just have a good band. I mean, we really care. We try to do the best we can every time. I sing my guts out every night the best I can, and people get it. Like, we love what we do, and it translates really well. So we get hired a lot.
Yeah, that's nice. We need music. We always need music, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Is it a little more difficult getting gigs in the US, or because of your great manager, your booking agent, whatever he is, maybe
Yeah.
it is not?
Yeah, we don't tour, we're not a kind of band that's going to go away for a few months at a time or even 6 weeks at a time. We've turned down lots of cruise ships and stuff for that reason. But we have P2 visas, so we can work in the US. We don't do that many dates down there now. We've been to Florida and Texas and Washington State a bunch of times, and we are playing this weekend in Washington State. So we do have P2 visas. We do it all correctly and properly, so that when those opportunities come up, we can do it.
Yeah, right. So when you're writing your originals, what inspires you to write?
Well, I like story songs and I like songs about life, right? So one of the shows we do is a Bob Seger show. And one of the things I always say in that show is Bob Seger's got the fun boogie woogie tunes and he's got the fast sort of rah, rah, rah songs. And then he's got some songs that really get you in the heart, like Turn the Page and Like a Rock and Against the Wind and stuff, right? And I try to emulate that sort of thing where you've got the fun songs and the happy songs that make people feel good. I mean, that's what music is, right? It makes people feel good. So that's why I say the purveyor of musical joy. I say right in our shows, everybody smile. Come on. It's a free country. We're listening to music. What do you want out of life? This is great.
For sure. So who were some of other than maybe Pete, who were some of your idols growing up?
Well, for singer songwriter, acoustic guitar, Gordon Lightfoot is always my favorite and the best ever. I play tons of his songs when I do my acoustic shows. I probably know 20 of his songs. Jim Croce, Cat Stevens, James Taylor, obviously all those guys. On the rock side, I'd have to say Santana, ZZ Top, all the 70s guys like Journey and Kansas and Styx and Boston. I'm a product of the 60s and 70s, so those songs resonate with me really well.
Yeah, I was just listening to Cat Stevens the other night. I don't speak well, so I always say I have the Spotify and I've got that on, or
nice.
Alexa, play some 60s music, Alexa, so it's nice to, like you said, it brings you back somewhere, even if you've never heard it before. It puts you in a really good place, right?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I do these acoustic shows and there's lots of young people there and they listen to the songs. And then as I do them more, they get really familiar. So there's lots of people in their 20s and 30s and, of course, 40s that are very familiar with. They know Time in a Bottle. They know Cats in the Cradle. They know those songs. They've heard them lots of times.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's kind of interesting. So what did your parents listen to? What type of music? My parents, for instance, it was all country music.
Well, I was raised on a full diet of Elvis and Roy Orbison and all the 60s stuff. My mom was a classical piano player, so I listened to all her Moonlight Sonata, Valse in E flat. She played all those songs, and I used to love that. I didn't want to necessarily play that music, but I really appreciated it, and I internalized it. My dad was a trumpet player, albeit, a struggling one, but they did the marching bands because we're from Ontario. So the marching bands were a big deal, the drum corps and the marching bands. So I was influenced by that as well. And then my uncle played in a band, so he played all the Gary Puckett and Roy Orbison and Jay and the Americans and all that stuff. So I listened to all that stuff and he taught me a lot of that music as well.
Right. Now you mentioned you were one time early on you were with your brother in the band. Does he still perform with you?
He plays, but he didn't, this was back in the 80s and we had the band March Hare, and that was from 1984. And, we struggled. We're young guys. We're trying to make some money and there wasn't a lot of money and there's a lot of late nights and stuff. And he decided he didn't want to pursue music as a full-time career. And for me, I had a family and I wanted to go to school, but I wanted to play music. Like music is such an important part of my life. I was never going to not play music, if I can use a double negative there, but that was never going to happen for me. I have to play music. I love it. It's in my heart and my soul. And my gift is to share that with the world. That's what I do. Yeah,
I like that. I know a fellow here in Chilliwack, an older gent that he gave up music because I think he had a really important guitar and it got stolen. And it just put him in a bad place, and he hasn't been able to go back.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it is really sad to hear that because his brother still performs a lot, and I don't know how much they perform together, but it's just you hear stuff like that and you wonder what would motivate somebody to steal a musician's equipment,
Yeah. Well, and the fact that that's a hurdle you don't want to overcome. To me, I mean, there's lots of setbacks, but nothing's going to stop me. There's a great guy named Tom Jackson, and he's a coach. He's a music coach, and he coaches bands and performers on how to enhance their shows, their live shows and stuff. And he made a great point. He said one time, he said, true musicians play because they have to. There's something inside of them that just has to do it, and they have really no choice in a sense about it. They just have to do it. And I thought that's me.
Yeah. I hear you. I understand that. I'm a person who likes to be in front of the camera, and that's started off as doing stand-up. And when I realized, like, oh my God, this was what I was meant to do this, it was such an eye-opener for me.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I knew, but,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting. I like speaking to musicians or anybody, for instance, I just love finding out their journeys. It's always so fascinating. Learning, for instance, that you have your parents who performed music or instruments, and that's kind of interesting, right? Did either of your parents sing at all?
They tried, but also keep in mind, my family, they're British and Irish heritage. I mean, there was lots of kitchen music. Uncle plays the banjo, grandpa plays the fiddle. My grandpa would stomp his foot on the floor playing the fiddle and stuff, and my uncle played guitar, and everybody sang and stuff. So the kitchen music was an influence on me as well. That people really feel it. Of course, they would be having a few brewskis along with the kitchen music. That was all part of it. But that's the way they entertained themselves in the 50s and 40s and 50s and 60s, right?
And you would think somebody with the last name of guitar would be musical. But no.
Did you try?
I picked, when I was a teenager, I picked up the guitar, and I learned to play it, but for whatever reason, I just didn't stick to it. So obviously it wasn't my thing. I did enjoy it while I did it, but
okay.
I wanted to play and sing, but because I don't have a singing voice, I don't carry a tune, it's like, it's just sort of discouraging.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Because for me, I started singing when I was 6. Yeah. And I remember some people saying, well, that sounds pretty good. And then I thought, well, I want to accompany myself, so I better play guitar. I took piano lessons, but I didn't like playing piano. I wanted to play guitar so I could sing and play like my uncle did. I wanted to emulate my uncle.
Yeah, now that's to me, that's more fun. Like, although I had a friend who was he wasn't a singer. He played classical guitar. He didn't sing, but it was very beautiful. But for me, it's like, no, I want to be able to do this. And then,
yeah.
Sing along. But anyway, it is what it is, right?
That's right. Yeah.
We find our place, whatever it is.
Yeah. And the vocals, to me, like my view of it, with no disrespect to the instrumentalists, people want to be sung to.
Yeah.
The times that I've played songs where people cry, you play like Leader of the Band or The Dance or something, and you see people, they well up, and they like First Cut is the Deepest by Cat Stevens, like I played a few weeks ago, and this lady started crying. That song, so it's the words and the voice that comes together that really touches people's heart. That's where the magic is.
I agree with you 100%. I hear you. Well, I think we're going to end it there. I think we covered everything, unless there's something I left out.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for contacting me. And I was more than I've seen some of your episodes, so I was familiar with that, and I do appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Well, just stay on camera for a little bit, okay? I'm just going to say bye to everybody. So you've been listening to musician Dan here, and you can look him up, and I'll give you his contact information if you'd like to get a hold of him. So thanks for watching the show, everybody. Take care and peace out.
A sense of community. Chilliwack's a place to be, a sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's a place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's a place to be, you'll see.